This is a Media Lab podcast. Welcome to Putting It Together, the podcast that goes through the entire body of work of Stephen Sondheim, show by show and song by song. My name is Kyle Marshall, your self-described Sondheim expert. I wanted to start with a not-so-happy story and send my condolences to Nick Cordero, who passed away at 41 this week after battling COVID-19 symptoms for, I think it's like the last 2 to 3 months. And while that's not directly related to Stephen Sondheim, I think this is a huge hit to the Broadway community and kind of proves that this whole pandemic, what we have been dealing with over the last few months, is something that's hitting closer and closer to home. Especially if you're in the United States, I really hope that you're staying safe and that we can all get through this together. But realistically, with Broadway shutting down now to at least January, things are going to take a while to get back up to speed. And the stuff that I love to do the most, going to the theater, watching live performances, is going to be some of the last stuff that actually gets reopened, which is a hard pill to swallow, I know, but also necessary so that we don't have a huge pile of casualties that we need to deal with. So hopefully this podcast has something positive to do in your life. I am only one man, at least for the time being. Once again, my hugest, deepest sympathies to Amanda Klutz, the wife of Nick Cordero, who passed away way too early. This is such an awkward transition that I have to do from there to this, but I also want to thank everyone who helped support this show over on Patreon. Of course, each and every person who has decided to help financially support the show is very, very valued by myself. In particular, I need to thank the God That's Good tier, as I do each and every week. So a big thank you to Todd Fuller and Jack Healy for being on that tier. If you want to check out and see some of the other extra things that I do occasionally post over on there, you can go to patreon.com/puttingittogetherpodcast. But now I guess it's time for plodding along. If you'll recall, last week Sally was lying to both herself and to Ben about her relationship with Buddy. That sweet moment is kind of interrupted by Phyllis. And it looks like they're about to get into fisticuffs, I guess is a good word, when they're interrupted by Stella, the character of Stella, who asks them to both come and participate in this performance of one of her old numbers called Who's That Woman? All right, we're about to hear my conversation with Karen Unland, who is the president of the Alberta Podcast Network. As you might have already understood and noticed over the last few episodes, all of these were recorded a couple of months ago. No one was really doing anything that they had to go out, so it was easy to schedule interviews. So this one is no different. And I think you'll notice that in some of the comments that we make about the current situation. I'm using quotations with my fingers. The current situation that we're in, which is actually the previous situation that we were in. Time is weird and non-linear. Anyways, we have a great conversation about this very song, and we're going to hear more about that after our break, where I go and thank some of our sponsors. Putting It Together is a proud member of the Alberta Podcast Network, locally grown, community supported. The Alberta Podcast Network promotes and supports Alberta-made podcasts and connects their audiences with Alberta-based businesses and organizations. This episode of Putting It Together is brought to you by Storylines, a podcast from Women in Film and Television Alberta. Storylines highlights some of our province's most successful women in film and television, both behind the camera and in front of it. Host Sheena Rossiter is herself a filmmaker, and she has had some deep and instructive conversations with trailblazers and experts in the field. A recent episode that you might find interesting is Orange is the New Black's Alicia Reiner. This was a conversation that Sheena had with the actor and producer Alicia Reiner, who is best known as playing the warden Fig in Orange is the New Black. So you can find Storylines on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen to podcasts. You can also find it at wifta.ca. That's WIFTA.ca. This episode of Putting It Together is also brought to you by Park Power, a provider of electricity and natural gas in Alberta that offers low rates, awesome service, and profit sharing with local charities. So in Alberta, you get to choose who to buy your energy from. If you choose Park Power, your money stays here. Plus, Park Power shares its profits with local not-for-profits that are working to make a difference in their communities. Shopping local is very important to Park Power's owner, Chris Kozowski, and we love local here at the Alberta Podcast Network, so it's a great fit. Learn more at parkpower.ca.
Hit it, baby. Who's that woman? I know her well. All decked out, head to toe. She lives life like a carousel. Bow after bow after bow. Nightly day.
Karen Unland, thank you so much for returning.
Thank you for having me on again, Kyle. This is my favorite thing.
That's great. I'm glad you're happy to be here. Because you've been here before, I want to jump right into the meat here. I want to know your introduction to Follies.
You introduced me to Follies.
Yes.
Well, I read about it when I read Finishing the Hat. I had never seen it. And I guess like most people who like musicals have heard Broadway Baby, Losing My Mind, and
I'm Still Here. It's probably.
I'm Still Here, yes. So I had heard those three songs before. I didn't remember any of the other ones, and I'd never seen the show before. So yeah, I was a Follies virgin going into this.
Was there any specific reason that you stayed away from Follies?
No, I didn't deliberately stay away from it. And when I read about it, I thought, oh, like I would love this. I love pastiche. I love history of musical theater. I would love to hear Sondheim's interpretation of all of these other composers. And then I saw the show and I thought, this is Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf, the musical. This is harrowing. I don't know if I like this.
No. Well, and that's the thing, the cool thing about this show is that even if you describe it, I think it doesn't do a great disservice. Because even if you said that, it's like Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf, the musical, I think that would scare off a lot of people that would enjoy it. And at the same time, you're not wrong in saying it that way. And I'm sure I've said this now multiple times on this show, but we've been recording these out of order, so who knows at this point. Which is, this had a very divisive reception when it first premiered in 1971. Like, it seemed like a lot of people hated it, a lot of people loved it, and there was really no in-between between those two reactions.
Yeah, I can see that. Having just listened to your season on Company, which felt during that season like, this really is like a sophisticated take on the human condition and relationships and everything. And now when I compare it to Follies, it seems lightweight. Do you know what I mean?
No, I get that. I know I've mentioned this with someone already too, which is like, if a company is the idea of like exploring relationships before marriage, Follies is the flip of that. It's after marriage. It's like during the relationship, after a long time of having a relationship. So I think it's really interesting that these came really side by sides, before and after.
Yeah, side by side by side.
That's right. That's right. So I guess because you are somewhat new coming into this, was there anything that surprised you about this production or the production that you watched?
So the one with Imelda Staunton. So, well, it's the first thing that struck me was part of the reason maybe that I haven't seen this show before is it is such a big production, right? Like, it must be so expensive.
I don't know what you're saying. There's only 22 songs in it.
22 songs and 2 sets at the same time, basically, right? And that production is just like gigantic. With the set is crazy, and the costumes for the showgirls are crazy, and it's like a lot of the Sondheim that I've been able to see in real life has been it's been possible to do a stripped down version of it, right? Like you can do Sweeney Todd without like building that whole world if
Right.
you want to. And I suppose you can do Follies, but like that production is like big and it fits it. It should be, because it is an homage to old Broadway. So that was one of the things I thought. And then the other thing I thought was like, I don't know, this may be too petty, but I am the age that Phyllis and Sally are right now. Like I just turned 50 this year, and I think they're 49 in this show. And I think the actresses in that production are too old to play what they
What
ought
they're supposed to
be.
be. Yeah.
Yeah. But they sing and dance beautifully. It was wonderfully. Yeah. But they seemed, they don't, it's not a looks thing. It's an acting thing. They acted older, I think.
Mm-hmm.
But that may just reveal my own sense of denial about how old I am.
Well, yeah. And I wonder how much of that is something that has become increasingly obvious is what 50 was in 1971 is very different than what 50 is in the year 2020. Like someone pointed out the other day that Jennifer Lopez is the exact same age as Wilford Brimley was in Cocoon.
Oh, wow.
And you're just like, no, that does not compute to me whatsoever. Now, of course, when you're a celebrity, you have like advanced like medical care and can go to the gym like 8 times a week if you wanted to, sort of thing. But still, like when you compare what we conceived of old, even in the 80s, is not what we consider old, I don't think, anymore.
It's true. And that's probably like one of the great gifts that baby boomers gave us by refusing to age, is that they kind of kept moving the goalposts on what old is.
So just blame the baby boomers for everything.
Sure. That's what we do on my show. So.
That's right. Now, the song we're talking about here today is Who's That Woman? And this is a one of those songs that the Follies girls comes out and sings. So, as Sondheim even likes to say about the show, there is no plot in Follies, which is true to an extent, but
sort of.
I push back a little bit about that as well. Regardless, this is sung by a character that we never see again, really. Her name is Stella. And so in the 3 versions of Follies that we're looking at here this season, she was portrayed by Mary McCarty in the original Broadway cast, Linda Barron in the 1987 London version, and then Dawn Hope in the 2017 National Theatre version. And this is another pastiche song. So this is Sondheim emulating some other composers. And what he actually really liked to do here in Follies a lot of the time was actually mimic someone for the music and then a different person for the lyrics, just to like give himself another test, I suppose, to try and marry them. He's
playing 3-dimensional chess all the time, and I don't know if anybody can even fully, like, can you even hear that, right? But he knows that there's that level of complexity in it.
Yeah, and I'll be the first one to admit, like, for sure, like, I can tell musically if we're listening to, say, Irving Berlin versus like a Cole Porter versus even like a Rodgers and Hammerstein. Like I can see, again, I can conceptualize that. But if you started mixing and matching and being like, well, that's really like an Irving Berlin lyric married with a Noel Coward song, I'm like, I don't know. I'm sure.
Take your word for it. That's what the program is for. Yeah.
Exactly. So what Sondheim says here is that lyrically who he is going after in this song is Cole Porter, somebody that he happens to like, even though he decries him a little bit about when he edges too far into being too cute with his lyrics. But lyrically, this is Cole Porter, and he actually mentions a very specific song called Down in the Depths. So we're going to listen to just a snippet of that sung by Ella Fitzgerald.
In my regal eagle nest, down in the depths, on the 90th floor, when the only one you wanted wants another, what's the use of swank and cash in a bank galore? Why, even the janitor's wife has a perfectly good love life, and here am I
Musically, however, this is not a Cole Porter tune. He is trying to emulate Richard Rodgers, which I find very fascinating, coming from, Do I Hear a Waltz and that sort of relationship that he had with them. But he still considers him a great musician. But this is how very specific he is. He's resembling Richard Rodgers, but with his Rodgers and Hart ears. Yes. So, again, I'm going to take his word for it, that is true. So I picked a specific song here. This is called Mountain Greenery, and it's sung by Susan Egan and Brian Darcy James.
In a mountain greenery where God paints the scenery, just two crazy people together.
While you love your lover, let blue skies be your covenant. When it rains, we'll laugh at the weather.
And if you're good, I'll search for wood so you can cook while I stand looking.
So those are kind of the references and framework that we're getting into here. And this is definitely something that is much more visual than it is a lyrical piece. Although I think there's some interesting things that we can bring out of the lyrics. Karen, I know I sent to you this morning a different interpretation because we have both seen the 2017 National Theatre version of this because they were nice enough to record a version of it that people can watch. And there is, I'm going to say it, there's a bootleg copy of the 2011 version starring Bernadette Peters that they have of this song specifically. So I wonder if you have any, thoughts and feelings about the two ways this was staged in those productions.
Yeah, so in the 2017 one, which I assume is maybe the tone that gets done the most, it's like it is a big Broadway production number.
Oh,
and everybody who's dancing, whether it's the older ladies or their ghostly counterparts, is dancing extremely well, I think, as a layman, right?
Yeah.
I'm sure there's mistakes to be made, but and to me, in the construct of the show, that really possibly even brings it. I feel like that whole show is like veering in and out of reality until we get to Loveland, when it fully leaves reality, right?
Yeah.
And until the very end, when we come back to reality. And so the fact that everybody is like hoofing it in that production, regardless of age, regardless of the passage of time, it kind of makes it kind of veer over into the other side of the mirror, so to speak, right? So that it's like this brief moment of just forgetting everything that's happened over the past 30 years. Whereas in the Bernadette Peters, Elaine Page one, right? It's more like how it would actually be if ladies of a certain age. Where,
people forgetting dance steps and all that sort of thing.
Trying to remember, how do you do this? And oh, it hurts. And trying to like just do the best you can. And we've all had a few. And so we're wobbly anyway. And it's just fun, right? And there's a little bit of a contrast then between the older ladies and their younger counterparts who aren't decrepit. So that was interesting. Actually, just remembering now in the 2017 version, there's a few times where particularly the actress playing Carlotta kind of looks like she's, oh, I hurt my knee, that kind of thing, right? So they're kind of straddling the two. But once they get like really dancing, there's like dancing.
Yeah,
good.
It is like supremely choreographed in that 2017 version. And I don't necessarily think it ever was in that 2011 version. At least it didn't feel like that from the video that I watched.
No, it kind of looked like, okay, we ran through this morning. Now let's 5, 6, 7, 8.
Yeah.
Which is probably, they're all good actresses. That's probably what they intended to do. Maybe. I don't know. It could be either way.
Sure. I do like that entire conception of the mirror, though, and I think both of them actually have moments of this really cool stuff of like the younger self and the current self emulating each other, and you're seeing them by the mirror. It's actually the 2011 version. They actually are doing it like back to back for a moment, which I always thought was an interesting idea, to like be doing these dance steps and back to back and making sure everything is mirrored of what they're doing. So some cool stuff that you can do there. Are you familiar at all with how Sondheim wanted this song to be staged?
I read how he described it in the book, but I don't have a really good spatial relation, so I couldn't quite understand what he had in mind.
So I think, from what I understand, it is that he did not envision the younger selves to be coming on stage quite as much as what it is in this piece. Instead, he wanted the women that are there in current day to start this dance, and there to be an obvious gap that would then be filled in with the younger self. So there was basically saying, hey, there were some people that died in the intervening years, and now they're coming back, and they're imagining in their minds all these people that should be here. And then they kind of fade back in, and it's just the people in current day. So I think that's what he was originally envisioning. Of course, the co-director, Michael Bennett, had other ideas. He said, it doesn't work because there's only 6 women up there anyways. You're not really going to notice that there's a gap there, or it's going to look really weird if we have a huge gap for seemingly no reason. But nicely enough, as Sondheim writes in his book, he says, obviously, Michael Bennett's choice was the correct one, and it's this pure Broadway tour de force thing that he was not even really envisioning. So this is what he says. What Michael did was to take a lightweight, semi-camp pastiche lyric and mine it for all of its emotional resonances as well as its imagery. I mentioned earlier the necessity of giving a director or choreographer a specific blueprint from which to take off. Michael ignored my scenario, but it did give him the springboard for the glory he came up with. Better yet, my notion wasn't lost forever. He used it in a chorus line. So you can give... basically, Sondheim created a chorus line, is what I'm trying to say.
I love that story because it demonstrates in what people always say about him, about what a generous collaborator he is, and how he really seems to believe in surrounding himself with talented people and being a forceful advocate for his own ideas, but also being open-minded enough to accept somebody else's better idea, which I think is why he's had so many enduring hits, because he's not the haughty auteur who thinks it's his way or the highway.
No, I love that too. He was big enough to understand, you know what? No, this does work better than what my idea was. So, so this is how the lyrics start. I'm just going to read the first stanza to begin with here, just to set the stage. So Stella says, "Who's that woman? I know her well, all decked out head to toe. She lives life like a carousel, bow after bow after bow. Nightly, daily, always laughing gaily. Seems I see her everywhere I go. Oh.
Who's that woman? I know her well, all decked out, head to toe. She lives life like a carousel, bow after bow after bow. Nightly, daily, always laughing gaily. Seems I see her everywhere I go. Oh.
Any big takeaways you have from that first little bit?
Well, it's like building up to the big reveal, right? So it's just kind of like setting the scenes of who is that? Who acts like that? But yeah, I don't. There's a few bits of that I'm not sure I understand exactly what he's getting at. It's sort of more evocative language than actually describing what the carousel bit is a little bit. I'm not sure what that means.
I don't know if I have a really great explanation, to be honest with you. Because a carousel spins round and round and round, never goes anywhere. Maybe that's what it is. But
yeah, but I think that's also maybe part of the critique that he's getting at, that Cole Porter have put together lots of pretty words, but what was he actually talking about? I don't know if it's a critique or not.
No, but I think that's true. He mentions in a later song I know in this book about how he really had to let go of what his sense of what a lyric should be, because he's really trying to emulate these other people. So rhyme schemes and words that he just does not use and tries to avoid in some cases, he had to lean into in some of these cases, because like that's how they wrote. Those are the words they chose. This is the imagery they use all the time. So he had to be a little bit more creative in that regard. This is kind of a Sondheimism in a way, which is I do like that it ends with that. As soon as I see her everywhere I go, oh, like that's what he's rhyming with, go and oh together, of course, with the realization it's like, oh, I'm just looking in a mirror. That's what's going on. Right. But she continues on saying, who's that woman? I know that woman. So clever, but ever so sad. Love, she said, was a fad. The kind of love that she couldn't make fun of, she'd have none of. Who's that woman? That cheery, weary woman who's dressing for yet one more spree. Each day I see her pass in my looking glass. Lord, 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 that woman is me.
Who's that woman? I know that woman so clever, but ever so sad. Love, she said, was a fad. The kind of love that she couldn't make fun of, she'd have none of. Who's that woman, that cheery, weary woman who's dressing for yet one more spree? Each day I see her pass in my looking glass. Lord, 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 that woman is me.
All right. the titular woman. For me, at least, I think this is where what we were discussing before, where I think the lyrics reveal more than just it being considered this throwaway song that I think it's somewhat presented as. I think it's speaking a little bit deeper, but I don't know if there's anything specifically that you wanted to point to in this section.
Well, yeah, because if you compare this to that kind of trio little bits where like the Plinkety Plunk dance number and Broadway Baby and
Paris,
right? Like those do seem like sort of, let me show you how I can write all these different kinds of, and let's set the scene about all the generations of ladies that are here, right? It's not it's not meaningless, but it's not tied to the themes of the show. Whereas this is like, that woman is not just Stella, that's Sally and Phyllis too. Right. They are going through this show, keep being confronted with their younger selves and and everything that didn't go over the past, didn't happen or didn't happen the way they dreamed or wanted it to over the past 30 years. And yeah, there's echoes as well of sort of, I kept thinking about the feminine mystique, like Betty Friedan's, the book or the concept, or the book, right? Like Betty Friedan's feminist idea about how trapped women of this generation were in these roles, and how unfulfilling, and how no wonder that they were so desperately unhappy and depressed, and eventually like much worse. And it's just like that this song is about that. That's pretty deep for like a throwaway dance number.
I know. And I think something we mentioned before we even started recording is that I don't think I even picked up on that until like my fourth or fifth listen through on this. Like, oh, this is actually really talking about other people in this show. Yes, it is still like a dance number and a really cool Broadway moment, but I think there is more to this than just what that would connote or connote.
Yeah, that's exactly my experience. Because you'd asked me like a few months ago if I would consider doing this song, and so I listened to it and I thought, I guess, like, what's it? I don't understand what. It's just kind of there, right? If you just listen to it without even seeing it, and you don't listen to it in the context of the whole show, it's okay. But it didn't set me on fire, right? It's not a standalone hit like Losing My Mind or I'm Still Here. So it took me a while to appreciate it, but then seeing it in the context of the show and understanding the meaning there made me appreciate it a lot more.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I know we've kind of already mentioned this, but honestly, the lines that cut deep is where she says, love, she said, was a fad. The kind of love that she couldn't make fun of, she'd have none of. Which does feel very pointed at Phyllis, which is like, you married to have the prestige of it, but you did not marry for love. This is not, and so you kind of like make fun of other people who seek that in some ways. So and it's a very sad existence just to be there as a trophy wife.
Yeah, and it's such a cutting prelude to "Would I Leave You? Could I Leave You?" Whatever that one is called at the end, where she just like rips his heart out. Yeah.
Right. The more I've really delved into Follies, by the way, and I'm sure like Follies devotees have known this for years, but for me, it's been a very recent realization of like how Phyllis is really the unsung hero of this piece. I think that she has some really great songs. She doesn't get the showstoppers necessarily, but she has some great songs in the second half of the show.
Yeah, and she's the one in touch with reality in a way.
Well, the rest of the gang kind of comes in here at this point. So this is where Sally, Phyllis, Carlotta, Christine, Dee Dee, and Meredith all come together. And the melody changes here too, as they sing, "Mirror, mirror on the wall, who's the saddest gal in town? Who's been riding for a fall? Who's Lothario let her down? Mirror, mirror, answer me. Who is she who plays the clown? Is she out each night till 3? Does she laugh with too much glee? On reflection, she'd agree. Mirror, 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 mirror." So, I don't know. What do you think about all these questions being thrown here? Of course, there is the Snow White analogy that's going on here.
It is, which is, that's a fairy tale about being jealous of youthful beauty, which is interesting echoes, and just Sondheim is fond of the sadder but wiser girl. In a way, right?
Yeah.
To quote a different musical, these are all these ladies are singing about, what it's like to live a while and realize that everything is not rosy.
When is everything going to come up roses for them? Is really the question of what's going on here.
Well, we're going to get a little bit even more towards the end of an echo of Gypsy.
Sure.
Me, yeah.
I do actually really love. I'm 100% convinced that he did this on purpose, but the fact that he says on reflection she'd agree and then goes into mirror again, I'm like, that's very nice.
It is very nice, yeah. And I wonder if the first time you hear it is in the theater, if that gorgeous little joke lands, or if there's just so much else going on. It's like I feel like he's left all of these presents for us along the way for posterity. When someone, he could not have possibly imagined that people would be dissecting his work the way we are doing right now. But there's such rewards when you do.
No, for sure. That's the thing that I love about this show, if I'm able to like my own show, which is that when you force yourself to really dig into it and be like, why this word and why is this here and does this have a second meaning? I feel for myself, I start to get even a better appreciation because there are these little things that are thrown into there. They're like, oh, that's really clever and that's really neat. And stuff that I would probably just blow by if I had not spent the time of actually just looking and reading through them.
And I think it's this part of the song where there's two, that as Sondheim often does, has two different lyrics happening at the same time. So it's literally impossible for the audience to absorb all of the words that are being said. But they're there, right? For upon later listening or later reflection, or maybe just your subconscious picks up to notice
Somehow.
the depth. Yeah.
By osmosis, you somehow retain some of these things.
Yeah.
This is where like the big dance break happens. Depending on which recording you listen to, there'll be either longer or shorter duration of this section for sure. I don't think this is a very controversial opinion, but I'm just going to say it right now. Tap sequences specifically on album recordings have never really done it for me because I can't actually see what's going on. And when you just hear tapping happening, I'm like, I'm sure it's cool to look at, but it's not that great to listen to.
Well, you must not like drum solos either then, right? But
I'm not a big drum solo guy either, but
I like it. I think that it's virtuosic what people who can tap dance well can do. And when I listened to the various versions of the song in my Spotify, I did find myself liking the ones that let it run on the dance.
This is also another very recurring thing I've been saying here this season, but Sondheim is very upfront with the fact that he very much dislikes the original Broadway cast recording because it cuts out so many things from it. So part of it being this kind of dance section very much gets compressed.
And I love the little glimpses when he talks about this of what the medium does, right? Like why did they cut out that much? Because you can only fit so much music on a LP.
Single LP, yeah.
So and now we have that is not a limitation, and sometimes that's good, sometimes that's bad.
Yeah, I know. Sometimes editing is a good idea, but
yes.
When you have this whole score that you really want to listen to, you had to wait a bunch of years, almost 2 decades, before you're actually given the option of doing that. Oh, I will say though, sorry, as one last little thing, again, if you are given the chance, and as far as I know, it's still available on Broadway HD, but that 2017 version of Follies, if you can go and take a look at it, I definitely would, because I think it is very well staged, this whole section here. And just to see it is pretty spectacular. I would love to have been in the theater just to see how that would actually resonate in a live setting, but it's pretty cool to see it even recorded.
And that's the thing about a big, beautiful, well-staged dance number is it is thrilling to see in real life. Like your mileage may vary, even it does between the two of us, on whether you want to hear the papa in the background of your recording, but it is like it. I can just imagine the feeling of seeing that in real life, because it was quite thrilling actually, just even to see it on the recording.
So we are definitely getting into a section now that has overlapping dialogue. So here is what Stella is singing. She says, "Who's that woman? I mean, I've seen that woman who's joking but choking back tears. All those glittering ears. She thought that love was a matter of hi there, kiss me, bye there." However, the dancers, this is what they're saying. "Mirror, mirror on the wall, who's the saddest gal in town? Who's been riding for a fall? Love was a matter of hi there, kiss me, bye there." So they kind of combine there all at one time. I find these lyrics are getting more and more depressing as they get through the song. Even though it's as happy and as glorious as this is, boy, are these oof. Like this is my problem, by the way, with most pop music, which is like, oh, that's a fun little tune, and it's like, this is actually about someone dying. I'm like, oh, well, that's not great.
Oh, I have this experience all the time right now because my kids they really like the Decemberists, and almost all Decemberist songs are about murder of one sort or another. And so just to have it in the background, oh, that's pretty. What's that about? It's like, it's about a chimney sweep who dies or whatever.
It's like, oh, gosh.
A common musical thing. But maybe it's something that Sondheim likes to do a lot is kind of have the music sound prettier than the sentiment.
And there is a dramatic reason why you would want to even do that, right? Because it plays with these two different emotions. Like if you truly listen to it, like this is super depressing, but we're trying to put on a happy face.
That's right. Yeah.
And I like, again, because this is even in the fiction of the show, Stella is singing this as a performance piece. This was her song that she would get up and do in the Follies, right? So she's not necessarily talking about herself, but I think these are definitely here for a reason, talking about some of our other protagonists in the show.
Yeah, and if it was just another, and here's another lady singing a thing that she sings, right? Then it would kind of be, it would feel like Follies was just a review with kind of a plot laid on top of it because you have to. But that's not what it comes across as, and it is because there is deeper meaning to this one and some of the other ones that come later.
Well, let's talk about the three statements that she has there. So she thinks that love was a matter of hi there, kiss me, bye there. What do you feel about that? Is this just like being sorry about one night stands, or is this even something deeper than that?
I guess it could be read both ways, which is an interesting thing, because it could be that sort of reflection of like Phyllis's approach. She has this loveless marriage, but she has fling, right? And there's those things along the way, but it can also be like talking about the callousness of youth, where you think you're always going to have another chance at somebody, and this is fun for now. We're here for a good time, not a long time, right?
Mm-hmm. I think also this is what I love about this song. The more I get into it, and I fear sometimes I maybe read too much into certain things, but I really think this does straddle the line between talking about both of our female leads, because I definitely think that it's easier to read this as a comment on Phyllis, but I'm wondering if there is a way that you can see Sally in this as well, which is hi there, kiss me, bye there could simply be like, like buddies come home, I kiss him, but then I don't really interact with him past that. I don't really want him to be around. Yeah,
that's true too. Yeah, I think that's a great reading of it. I don't think that's too deep at all, because that's part of Buddy's frustration, where he doesn't actually feel like Sally loves him or is interested in seeing him, right? Right. And like the emotion that a marriage can least withstand is contempt, and there's like so much of that you can see in their relationship, in both relationships. Sally's is a little bit more deeply seated, and she's pretending that everything is fine and they have a perfectly lovely life, but she's not into it.
Well, this is how the song ends. So the dancers are saying, mirror, mirror, answer me, who is she who plays the clown? Lord, Lord, Lord. And then mirror just a bunch of times. Whereas Stella is saying, who's that woman, that cheery, weary woman who's dressing for yet one more spree? The vision's getting blurred. Isn't that absurd? Lord, 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 Lord a bunch of times. And then that woman is me. That woman is me. That woman is me.
Is
all right, so that's how we end the song. I think there is the actual metaphor that's going on here is Stella looking into a mirror and being like, oh, I didn't realize I had become this. Right? It's like, it's not until I see myself in the mirror to be like, oh my gosh, like I have become this thing that I didn't realize I'd become. And I do put out, like, again, the performances of this are pretty good across the board. That final one, like that woman is me, like, is a very declarative statement at the end of like bring down the house, hopefully, is what they're trying to do. Yeah. But what do you think about these last bunch of lyrics?
Well, I love the echo to, is it Rose's Turn that ends with me, me, me?
Yeah.
Or, no, it's everything's coming up roses.
Oh, that's right.
So that it made me think of that other disappointed middle-aged lady that Sondheim had brought us several years before that. And
if anyone actually did need a mirror, though, to take a look at herself, and
it was
Rose.
So maybe we have like more reflective ladies in other ways here, but so I don't know if that's a deliberate echo, but it sounds like it to me. And then I also think there's a little bit of, the expression mutton dressed as lamb. It's like a really awful saying about an older woman who's dressing too young for.
Oh my gosh. Okay. All right, sure. No, I get it.
And I feel like that is Stella's looking in the mirror and thinking like, what am I doing here? Like I'm doing the same thing I've been doing and can't pull it off anymore. So that was interesting to me as well.
I do like the imagery here, like the visions getting blurred. Like again, with a couple of different ways you can read that, which is like, I'm getting older, so my vision isn't so great anymore.
Yeah.
But I think there's also the I almost don't want to confront this too much, or else it will reveal too many truths. So like it's blurring, and I'm going to walk away from this, almost like a TV screen becoming fuzzy or something like that. So yeah.
Well, and the other thing that can make your vision blur is if tears are rising in your eyes.
Right.
And so that it works on that level as well. Have you ever gone to a reunion?
I've been to a family. I've been to two reunions. I've been to a family reunion, and I was actually at my 10-year high school reunion as well.
So 10 years is not enough.
It's not enough.
You're still a baby.
We need to see people losing hair. Damn it.
Yeah, it's as someone who's gone to a few reunion-like things from the times when I was like in my late teens or early 20s. It really is an experience it just really forces you to contemplate all the changes that have happened, physical and otherwise, over that time to yourself and to your compatriots.
How close to the feeling of Follies do you have in those reunions? Meaning, are there people that are putting on a mask, putting on airs? How much do you see through what people are trying to do when they come back to people they knew in their past?
I think that the closest experience I have to this was a big party that we had for the 100th anniversary of my student newspaper that I worked at, the Gateway at the University of Alberta. And this was quite a while ago, like almost 20 years ago now. So it was like, I'm old, Kyle. But it was like this, multi-generational. So there was people at this, not just from our cohort of the early 90s, but from as far back as you could go to present day. And similar to the Follies reunion, where we have Heidi from 1918 and
right.
from the every decade. So it's like it's not just one mirror you're seeing, because you're seeing, you're comparing yourself, your younger self, to your present self, much older self, but then seeing people who are even older than you and thinking, okay, that's the future. Seeing people that are like kind of in between where you were and where you are, and thinking, oh, that's like, I'm already past that. And it's kind of exhausting is what I'm
Well, luckily right now we can't meet up in groups anyways, so
right,
we don't have to worry about it.
Thank goodness. But there's this, right now as we're recording this, there's a thing going around Twitter called Me at 20, I think it's a hashtag.
Yes, yeah.
And so it's like the social media is foisting this feeling on me everywhere.
That is true. I don't want to post I actually don't have that many pictures from when I was 20, because this was before phones and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So I only have like 2 or 3 of them from the digital camera that I've imported onto my computer. I just don't want to show the really embarrassing highlights that are in my hair when I was 20 years old. So,
but the point of it is to say, so look how much smarter, suaver, handsomer, more
Right.
sure of myself I am now than then.
Mhm.
Maybe. I
Maybe.
don't know. I haven't posted mine. So
So I guess overall, what are your impressions overall of this song?
I think it's a song that you have to see to truly appreciate, because it is a dance number, even though, but the lyrics are not throwaway, and the music has been in my head since I started studying for your show. Like it's not like it's good. He doesn't write anything that's not good. But it really is. It does depends a lot, I think, on the production and also the context of the whole show to fully appreciate.
So I'm going to admit something super embarrassing that I was not going to, but because you said this, I'm going to do it anyways. So the other night I was, getting ready for bed, brushing teeth, flossing, and I was humming a song. Like, what song am I humming? And it was like, oh, I'm singing Mirror, Mirror from Who's That Woman? That's what I'm singing.
There you go.
So,
it's insidious. It gets in there.
Sneaks into there a little bit. Well, thank you so much for joining me here today, Karen. I want you to take a moment here and just let people know if they wanted to follow you online, how they can do so.
So I personally am on Twitter and Instagram as Karen Unland, at Karen Unland, KarenUnland. And I do a podcast with my daughter called That's a Thing, which she's 18 and she explains to me what is going on in her world, and I try to draw parallels to what has gone on in mine. And so it's like you could imagine that show as broken down me and young, beautiful showgirl her mirroring each other around the stage. And you can find that at that'sathing.transistor.fm.
Perfect. There was one question I just remembered I didn't ask. Do you have a favorite recording? Which is your favorite recording of this song?
I think I couldn't pick. I think that because I like polished and I like rough, right? And so it just really depends on the mood that I'm in. And but that 2017 was quite good, I think.
Yeah, overall, I'm a big fan of that 2017 version. To be honest with you, this is one of those songs that I think each of the three recordings are pretty good. I don't think you can go wrong with any of them, to be honest. The 1987 one is probably the most rough vocally, but I think it works. So I still liked it.
Yeah, I'm really, thank you for making me watch this show, because
Right.
I would have got around to it. I am a completist in my way, just in my own time, but it was, I'm really glad to have known it. But I do have to say, like, a warning, if anybody is listening to us who hasn't seen Follies before, which I don't know if there would be anybody like that, it's harrowing. Like, it is not, like, you have to be emotionally prepared for the show.
Yeah, this is not something. Don't do what I did and be like, oh, it's a Tuesday night, I'll just jump into this and watch it, and be like, oh boy, okay, I was not prepared for that.
Yeah, it's
All
very good, but it's hard.
All right, thanks again, Karen.
Thank you, Kyle.
Thank you so much for listening. You can send emails to puttingittogetherpodcast@gmail.com. Also, you can follow Sondheim Podcast on Twitter and on Instagram. And you can also support the show on Patreon by going to patreon.com/puttingittogetherpodcast. Thank you to the Alberta Podcast Network, to Storylines, and to Park Power this week. Putting It Together is available on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, and pretty much anywhere that you can get podcasts from. Consider subscribing so that you never miss an episode. Next week, we'll be talking about I'm Still Here, even if I am a pinko commie. As always, a big thanks to the great Chris Taniguchi, who designed the podcast artwork, and Nick Driscoll for composing our theme music. Well, we've reached the end of our episode. Yes, I know. Goodbye for now.
The meat and potatoes of it, but because Follies is so involved in this idea of pastiche, this one is based on a few different things. So I'll be saying that, hey, we're about to listen to this thing. Of course, we won't actually be listening to this thing. They'll all be done in post.